Erev Tov, everyone. Rashi points out to us that the first three subject matters in this week's parsha are all interrelated. One follows the other. I mentioned to you, we discussed Chumash Dvorim generally, that it has different rules than the other four books of the Chumash. So in the other four books of the Chumash, there is a machlokas in the Gemara, and amongst all the Meforshim till today, whether we are Doresh Smuchim, whether we look at the juxtaposition of subject matters, does the juxtaposition, the fact that A follows this one, is that significant or not? And there are many Meforshim who hold that as far as the Chumash Bereishis, I mean, Rashi's basic idea, in the first four books, there's no order. I mean, there naturally is an order from heaven, but it's not subject to our editorial order of how we would put things together. But in Chumash Dvorim, everyone holds that we are Doresh Smuchim, because Chumash Dvorim are the words of Moshe Rabbeinu. So even though Kaviyachal, the Rabbanu Shalom, was Maskim al Yodo, the Rabbanu Shalom agreed with it, but it's a different tone, a different type of prose that exists in the other four Chumashim. And therefore it has different rules. When he can't be, we're not Doresh Shakal Gzeir Shova in the Chumash Dvorim. There are things that we don't do. So here we're Doresh Smuchim. So Rashi says, because we're Doresh Smuchim, so the first parsha is Eshet Shifas Toar. And I discussed with you last night that even though it was mutter, it was a mistake. We discussed that many things that we think are mutter turn out to be mistakes that we do anyway. So the first parsha is Eshet Shifas Toar. The second parsha is that he has a woman who he does not like, who's snua, and there's immediately a rift in the family, who's the Bechor, who's entitled, who's not entitled. And we're all aware that there's no fight like a family fight. And especially when it comes to matters of inheritance and primacy, those things are absolutely lethal. And therefore you have the Torah's second parsha here says that, as Rashi points out, because he married the Eshet Shifas Toar, which was not a good idea, so now he ends up that he's got this conflict in the family. And then there's a third parsha of Ben Sorer Moreh. You have a child that nothing helps. And the child itself, himself, becomes a threat to the family and to the society. He's only interested in his own satisfactions. And Rashi points out they're a matter of addiction that we know in our time that a person is addicted to something, and then he hasn't got money to pay for it. He becomes a thief. He has to get the money. And in our time, for instance, because of drugs, there's a high rate of criminality amongst people who wouldn't otherwise be criminals. But because he's addicted to it, he has to get it. And therefore, we're afraid that eventually, Malastim Abrios, he'll destroy society. So the Bensora Mora is brought to trial and executed. So Rashi says one thing leads to another. The fact that he married Yifat Stolar led to the fact that the rift in the family leads to having a Bensora Mora. The Gemara, there's a parak in Sanhedrin called Bensora Mora. The Gemara itself has a very interesting view, completely different views. One, Man the Omar in the Gemara says that Bensora Mora lo hoya v'lo nivra. Never happened. It's only a metaphor that the Torah provided for us, that we should learn from it the dangers of not raising children correctly and of doing serious error without realizing what the consequences will be. So there's a man the Omer that says, never existed. There's a second man the Omer that says, what are you talking about? Ani Yoshavti al Kivro. Not only did it exist, I can tell you where he's buried, where they executed him, and where his remains are. So there are a number of very difficult Gemaras because there's something here that our petty minds really find it hard to understand. Rabbi, did it happen or didn't it happen? Was there ever a Bensora Mora or not? And if there never was a Bensora Mora, then why does he say, Ani Yashavti al Kivro? So this automatically raises the Inyan of Bensora Mora from one of pure halacha to what we like to call drush. The Gemara itself says, drosh v'kabel schar. There's a drush here. Drush is not an actuality, but it's a value system that is meant to teach you something, and that's its validity, is the fact that it is instructive. So what's instructive here? So there's a famous piece of drush of the Chassam Sofer. His son also quotes it to the Chassam Sofer. So he looks at the problem and he says, how do you reconcile these two opinions? One says, Lo hoya v'lo nivra, and the other one says, not only Lo hoya v'lo nivra, I can give you examples of it. So the Chassam Sofer says there are three cases in the Gemara where the Gemara says, Lo hoya v'lo nivra. And then there's another man, the Omer, that says, not only did it happen, I can tell you how and where and what. So one of them is Ben Sorer Mored, we just discussed. Another one is Nige Botin. We find in by Metzora, Tzoras, that plague that existed at the time of the Chumash. So the plague invades the house. And because of that, the house has to be dismembered and destroyed. So the Gemara says the requirements of halacha, that the plague appear only in the corner of the house, and that it spreads only equidistant in that corner to each of the directions. Those requirements are so otherworldly, impractical, therefore it's lo hayv lo nivra. And therefore the Torah, which gave us the halachas regarding it, is telling us this is not a real case. This is a metaphor. So we have two cases now. We have Mensoer Mora and we have Nige Botin. There's a third case the Gemara brings by Ir Adachas. The Torah says that there's a city that everybody worships, Avodah Zorah. So you have to destroy the city, you burn everything. But the Gemara says you can't burn everything because every Jewish city, no matter how bad they are, has mezuzahs. And the mezuzah is the Shem Hashem. You can't burn it. So it's obvious that it's also lo hayv lo nivra, that there ever was an Ir Adachas. And yet there's a Mandi Omer that says, I saw the ruins of the city. So the Sam Sefer says as follows. It's a very good drush, but it certainly doesn't resolve the problems as to how do we understand these seeming contradictions. Some Sefer says, if a person says, my child is perfect, he can do no wrong. We all love our children, but it's hard to have a perfect child. But if he says, lo hayv lo nivra, my child is so perfect that he can never become a ben soer or more. He can never do anything wrong. So then what happens is that he does become a ben soer or more because you did not drive defensively regarding him. You didn't take care to make sure that he doesn't become. You think that he's so holy, he doesn't need anything. And he says the same thing regarding plagues in the house. My house, my family, perfect. You can never have a nega in my house. So if you say that, if you say lo hayv lo nivra, so then there's a good chance the nega will happen. And the same thing is true by Ir Adachas, my society. We have such a great society. We have such noble ideals. And nothing can ever go wrong. That becomes an Ir Adachas. We say lo hayv lo nivra, what are you talking about? But there's a Mandi Omer says that I sat on its ruins. So he said that's a moral lesson that we can learn from this. Again, to drive defensively. You have to be careful with your children. Don't make assumptions. Especially you send them to school and you pay tuition, so let the school take care of it. But that isn't how it works. And the same thing regarding your house. Your husband or a wife to the end. You have to build up the family together. Otherwise, who knows what can happen? And certainly regarding society generally. In the United States, there was a president that gave us the Great Society, which turned out not to be so great. Have to be careful. That's the message of the Torah. Al tamin be'atzmecha. You have to have self-confidence, but not arrogance. There's a line between them. The ability to measure that line and not cross over it is the measure of success in life. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer Rotz HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'zakos es Yisrael lefichach yivu lahem Torah mitzvos shenemar Adonai chafetz man tzidko yagdil zorov yadil.